Okay, hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to talk about another way that we can approach, another angle that we can take when talking to a Buddhist. Now, we already talked in a previous video about the Eightfold Path and how we can start breaking some of those down. Like, for example, right speech is truth. Well, okay, well, what's truth and how do you define that? So we've talked about that, and then we can have, there's a grounding issue there. Where do we get truth? Well, it comes from the oneness. Well, how does anything come from the oneness? It has no person. There is no, you can't, that it just doesn't make sense. It breaks down. I don't even know what to say. So when we come to the Four Noble Truths, well, we have to ask, how do we know those are true? Because this is Siddhartha Gautama, who does not claim to be God. He says, I'm a guy. I found a path, a way of living that seems to bring peace, and it's a philosophy. He's not claiming this is to be a religion. And so the question here is, how does Siddhartha Gautama know that these truths are actually true? Why are we committing our lives to these things that some guy said? What evidence do we have to make that a worthy decision to make, to follow these sort of four truths? Okay, so that is another situation that I will leave open to conversation with Buddhists. Okay, so how do we know these truths are true? Where do we even define truth? Well, it was this guy's opinion. Okay, how much do we trust this guy's opinion? How do we know that he has the most reliable opinion of all people to commit our lives to this? Zach, you have any thoughts on that right there?
I don't. The only thought that, well, yeah, I have one. The only thought that I have is where does the Buddhist, where would they naturally go in this conversation? I have to imagine that it would be fairly difficult to get them cornered, so to speak, on this one. Not that from our perspective, the logic behind what we're saying is solid, but from theirs, it's so um it's such a foundationally
Hmm.
it's such a foundational question.
Yes,
Where would they go when they don't have any answers for like the first three layers of it, you know?
I don't
What
know.
is truth? Why is this in place?
Yeah.
Why is this guy? Yeah, there's there is a is this for more so for the edification of the
Yes.
believer, or is this
I would
for
say
the maybe a Western Buddhist?
here's what I would say. Yeah, definitely for a Western Buddhist, if you have like someone who lives in the United States or Europe and does not grow up in a Buddhist culture, they grow up in a Western culture and then they adopt Buddhism, you're going to be able to have this conversation with them because they did grow up going to schools that taught at least based off of formal logic, okay, from Western philosophy. Now, if you go over to India, I can't speak to that. I haven't been there. I haven't talked to that type of Buddhist, at least as far as I'm aware. So that may be a different conversation, but I would say yes, primarily from a edifying your faith perspective, these are some major issues. Okay. Secondly, they're tools for approach. Now, occasionally when we're talking with people, we need to have an emotional approach. Some of the questions you brought up in other videos, I really love those. I think we should have a video with some of those questions. Now, when I'm talking with someone, I'm doing a lot of listening and I'm trying to fully understand their perspective. Now, what happens to me when I'm communicating with someone and they know I really care about them and I'm asking a lot of questions and I really want to understand, because that's true, they actually will ask me for my opinion. And that is when I will come in and I have these sort of tools in my mind, especially for the Western Buddhists, which I've had some, usually it's more new agey, like I said, but I have actually had a student in apologetics classes who was raised by Buddhists. And so as I'm talking with her and working with her in these classes, um, as I'm listening, I'm coming in with them. I'm not contradicting them, but it's like, well, hey, oh, that's so interesting. I'm so glad to hear your experience. And they're like, well, what do you think? How do you think this works? And when I say, well, I think that that's so interesting. I think that there's a lot of tradition and a lot of history in your family with Buddhism. And I think it's a beautiful thing. At the same time, there are some questions that maybe I don't really understand. And now I have a quiver of arrows And whichever one applies to the conversation is the one I might start trying to ask about. And now I know none of these have a logical answer. So if they're a logical person, like a Western, someone who's raised in the West, they're going to pretty quickly understand that, oh, yeah, I guess I never thought about it that way. And this was very helpful for the student in which I was working with, for her to kind of think through some of these logical fallacies. Because again, she went to a Christian school through 12th grade, and her entire family was Buddhist. And so she could see the logic and the rationale. And so that was helpful in that case. But it is primarily, I would say, for the benefit of the believer to understand your faith is sound. And then secondarily, to give us sort of a quiver of approaches that we can take as people are asking us questions and opening up to our opinions as we're listening to them and caring about them. So that's where we'll end this video. Awesome thought, Zach. Okay, in the next video, we're going to continue with another maybe possible fallacy within the Buddhist worldview. I'll see you there.